It is The Line After Dark. It is Seth Andrews, Paulogia. We are back. The duo has been reunited. The band is back together. Paul, good to see you, brother.
Good to see you. Gonna be a great night.
What has been happening in your world? Do we get to talk about the movie? Do I get to do that before we do anything else? Because it's really all I want to talk about to start the show.
Fair enough. I did mention this on one of the shows. Yeah, I mentioned that there's a movie coming. I try not to let the worlds collide, as it were. But if you're interested, Seth, as my friend who is excited for me maybe spending less time on atheism, sure.
Just for a second, and by the way, theist callers will get priority. Please dial in. We'd like to hear your evidences or your reasons to believe in a God. If you're an atheist, fine, you're welcome to dial in. We'd love to speak to you as well on a relevant topic, but we're probably going to give the theist priority. We ask for brevity. We ask that you find a point and get to it, but we'd love to have a meaningful and constructive conversation. All of the links and the phone number right there on the screen. But until the switchboard finishes populating, no, I want to talk about this, even though it's not about religion or atheism. Holy shit, dude, you were involved in something that is now a movie. Tell me about it.
Well, after I left, some people know that I worked for Lucasfilm, and I worked on Star Wars films and a little bit on Indiana Jones stuff. And when I left that, one of the things I wanted to do was play in my own sandbox. I'd played in George Lucas's sandbox for quite a few years, and I wanted to play in my own. At the time, this was the early 2000s. Well, the best way to do that was comic books. I loved comic books, been a comic fan of my life, so I started a publishing company, Red 5 Comics, which is still going. Some people may know it. One of the first titles that our company put out was something that co-wrote by myself and Scott Chitwood called Afterburn. And it was a little graphic novel that we put together. And that got... It's been development hell for about a decade. It was originally purchased by Tobey Maguire. Other people had purchased the rights over the years. And finally, one team that, that lasts a couple years each, and then someone new buys it. Anyway, finally someone has made it. And a trailer and a poster came out, I want to say a week ago or so. And starring Dave Bautista, Samuel L. Jackson, and numerous other faces where you're going to go, oh, yeah, that guy. Yeah, it's coming out this fall. And Afterburn. And my name's on the poster, which is like this huge bucket list thing. So I've been behind the scenes before. Well, this is still behind the scenes, but it's exciting. It's kind of fun.
I sent Paul a text as soon as I saw that this was happening. I'm like, oh, my God, that is the coolest thing ever. Like, ever. Total accomplishment there. Are you an illustrator, or did you write the story for the graphic novel?
So I've done, yes, I'm an illustrator, but I didn't illustrate this one. So when I was launching the company, we wanted to have a whole fleet of titles going. So for some, I was the writer. For some, I was the editor. For some, I've done some artwork. So no, this on Afterburn, it was Wayne Nichols was the primary illustrator on that one. We actually had other illustrators work on subsequent storylines in the Afterburn saga, but no, I was there. Just not. Actually, it is just the writer. The art is obviously in a comic book is kind of half the collaboration, but pretty cool. It was our take on Indiana Jones in their own way, where George Lucas very much wanted to make a James Bond film, but they wouldn't let him. And Steven Spielberg said, "Well, just make your own. Just make up your own character and have him do James Bondy things." And it was the same for us. We really wanted to do Indiana Jones comics, but couldn't license Indiana Jones. Well, let's do a treasure hunting adventure in a different setting. And so that was sort of the genesis of that. So it's fun.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Congratulations. I hope the film
Yep.
is, I hope it's good. You know, it's funny when you give a creative work to somebody else. I'm kind of a Star Trek geek as far as classic and next gen. And I was recently listening to the audiobook for a 50-year mission, which was the first 50 years of Star Trek. And they were talking about how, like, Harlan Ellison, one of the great sci fi writers in history, had written City on the Edge of Forever as this massive thing. You know, it's unshootable. 700 extras were going here, and he had things that wouldn't, they had no budget, no time. It wouldn't even fit on a 4:3 television screen. But he was writing it as a writer.
Right.
And he gave it to Star Trek, and they were like, "Ah, crap, we got about a buck and a half to shoot this thing, and it's TV, and we've got 43 minutes. I guess we'll do this." And Harlan Ellison literally loses his mind. He's like, "Oh my God, I cannot believe you've distorted my beautiful baby." And then other instances where people's source material has been brought to life, and I hope the second is true for you. So I'm sure you've had those thoughts.
Appreciate.
Oh my God, it's my baby, right?
Yeah. The it is absolutely there. There's also that. There's also after 10 years, they're just kind of like, oh, to cross the finish line at all is
Really? Yeah.
is exciting as well. So yeah.
All right. Good for you. Well, thanks for the indulging me, and I think the
Well,
listeners and
thank you for
viewers will be
allowing me
interested as
to
well.
indulge. Appreciate.
Dude, it's a major accomplishment. I mean, it's something that few people will ever be able to do, and so I think people who know you and follow your work and just love what you do take a lot of joy in seeing that kind of thing happen. Finally, the dots connected. Finally, the
That's
stars
right.
aligned. You know, I mean, finally is probably the operative word. So
Agreed.
anyway,
Cool.
we're going to talk about God tonight. I don't know. Have you heard any relevant God arguments that have? I've been looking across the coast to coast United States. I don't see God anywhere. Mostly, I just see hell, which may be proof of God. You're looking down from Canada. I mean, what are you guys just thinking about taking a cutting device and literally sawing the United States off of the continent so that you don't have to be geologically attached to us? Because I
Well, I
would.
will tell you, yeah, that I mean, it's one of these things where people know we know you, and that's kind of embarrassing now.
Come on.
I mean,
I mean,
we are definitely. It's no joke to say that almost every Canadian political speech these days, regardless of party, is detangling ourselves from the tight coupling that our countries have had for so many years. And in many ways, the damage has been done because we now know that any treaty that doesn't matter what treaty we ratify now, it doesn't matter this current i- i- administration that you've got right now may well make a treaty that they think is a good deal, but in 3 years' time, the trajectory seems to be not keeping your country keeping the word. At least that's their reputation around here these days. And then
oh, well,
just the go ahead.
words don't mean things here. Words have
Right.
stopped meaning things. And so it is what it is, and it's not what it wasn't, and it might be what it couldn't be. And I mean, the Epstein client list is the one we've been talking about recently. For
Yeah.
those who've been doing hard time or in a coma for the last 2 decades, Jeffrey Epstein, the child trafficker, the billionaire molester, predator, um, and of course he's dead now. Suicide in his jail cell. There's a whole other series of conspiracy theories, but he was enabled by a great many people because of who he was. And for a long, long time, there has been this purported list of clients who were flown on Epstein's plane to Epstein's private island to essentially rape underage girls. And it's a list, and it was a political football for Trump and his cronies for the longest time. And now, all of a sudden, out of the clear blue, there is no list. There never was a list, even though they said there was a list on somebody's desk. And then Elon Musk comes forward, and this is the angle I've been talking about. He says, "Oh, I've seen the list. I know there's a list." And at first he said Trump's name was on the list, and then he backtracked. And then Trump wasn't returning his phone calls anyway. So then he reversed and went hard again. And then he said former Trump strategist Steve Bannon was on the list. And I'm screaming at the computer monitors. I'm watching all this and reading the news. And I'm saying, Elon has just admitted that he knew that Donald Trump was on the Epstein list, he foreknew and he partnered with him anyway.
Yep.
Right? He partnered with him anyway. And only when it went south for Elon did he decide he was going to take vengeance by exposing. He covered for a pedophile. If it is not true that Trump's name is on the list, that means that Elon is doing what he did years ago with the cave rescue diver after those boys were trapped and he wanted to send his submarine. And the guy said, nah, it's a stupid idea. And Elon's response was to call him a pedophile. That went to court. That means that he is willing to call someone a child rapist just because they piss him off. I mean, no matter how it shakes out, Elon Musk is one of the worst people in the world. And so I guess that's a lot of what people have been talking about lately is is the list, who's on it, how do you know, has the list been destroyed, are there copies, blah, blah, blah. You guys been having those conversations up north, I'm guessing? No?
We definitely, well, I mean, we are having that exact conversation about Elon Musk for sure. One of the things that the Canadian government has also done is that we have canceled most of Elon's contracts up here in Canada. Something that I do think that ball is going to drop, if only out of pettiness, on your side of the fence as well.
Well, I was reading that the Cybertruck, which is the only vehicle that Elon is actually designed, like the others were designed by the
Sure.
Tesla team, right? The Cybertruck, that was Elon's brainchild. They're saying it is about to join the Edsel and a few other choice vehicles as one of the greatest automobile failures in the history of cars, like ever. This will be the legacy of the Cybertruck. And do I feel a sense of Schadenfreude? Yeah, I kind of do. I do. I mean, I don't want to see good. I'm tired of. I promise you, I'll get to the switchboard. But Paul and I are talking. Let us talk. I've heard some people say, "Well, karma's going to get him," and I'm like, "Oh, I wish karma was real." But we all know how often terrible people get away with it, and how often wonderful people are punished and meet nothing but suffering and calamity and injustice in their lives. And so when something bad does happen to a bad person, do I feel a sense of, if not joy, satisfaction? I'm not above it. You know what I'm saying? I'm not above it. You know what I'm talking? Does that make me a bad person, Paul? Am I a bad human being?
I mean, you aren't pulling a lever to make this happen.
Yes.
You're just an observer who is not going to mind. It's not like you could save him. It's not like there's nothing you could do to stop it. The other conversation that we're having, though, bring it back around movies just briefly for a moment, is the certain reactions to the new Superman film. And it's making me very sad because when I was a believer, I thought I was a part of the religion that was for kindness. I thought it was for the religion that God would go leave the 99 and save the one. That this religion that I was involved with was a selfless thing. And for certain segments of the population right now to be very angry at the Superman movie because it dare portray Superman as someone who is kind and as someone who is an immigrant. I don't know if you've been catching any of that. It being led a little bit by Dean Cain, but it's weirdly, when you're asking what's been happening in religious circles, what I've been observing is this just general notion that empathy now is just, no one should have empathy in the Christian church. And that is becoming the pervasive characteristic versus, when you used to say, oh, he's a good Christian man or good Christian fellow, you kind of meant that they welcome people into their home. That's not what it means now. Now it means I exercise my rights. If you get in trouble, fuck you. And I guess we're late night. I can say whatever we need to do. But
whatever you want.
I'm very sad these days, even though I work every day to counter the claims of Christianity. It still makes me sad what it's become. I don't know.
Well, yeah. Well, first of all, it's interesting that this is the first time in a quarter century people have actually been talking about Dean Cain, who played Superman on Lois and Clark, The New Adventures, which was what, late 90s, and then he went off. I think he's doing Pure Flix movies. He's just been wandering
he's
out in
Kevin
the fringes.
Sorbo. When you can't get Kevin Sorbo, you get Dean Cain.
He's like David A.R. White, who did some Superman in the 90s kind of thing. And all of a sudden, everybody cares what Dean Cain thinks. It's, I take it in the teeth sometimes, Paul, so I'm going to beg you to back me up. I'm loading this question or loading this story. But I am an opponent of Christianity because it is false. It is a debunked mythology, and the Bible is loaded with all kinds of awful shit. This is not news to this audience, right? Where it gets sticky is there are some teachings in there that you can find that are actually lovely. They're not original. They're not supernatural. They don't prove a Jesus, but, love your neighbor, right? Be charitable, be kind. I mean, it's not gonna win any awards because it's not, you don't have to be a brain surgeon to figure this out. But when I see believers and they supposedly hold to the best teachings of Jesus Christ, and I see the blind allegiance to the authoritarian Donald Trump, and it's a worship, and I think, hang on just a second. What happened to don't take vengeance, right? Bible said, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. Turn the other cheek. Whether or not you think that's a good command, and I don't, this idea that they would go after the vengeful guy who said, get even, when he wrote The Art of the Deal. Don't bear false witness. Don't lie. Are you shitting me? Don't lust. Don't commit adultery. Don't be greedy. The love of money is the root of all evil. I mean, who's greedier than Donald Trump? Pride goes before the fall. Be humble. Are you shitting me? This is one thing after the other. And I'm like, how? And then I have to listen to this nauseating rationalization where they say, well, the Lord sometimes uses flawed people to carry out his will. And I throw up a little bit in my mouth. Would you have fallen for this when you were a devout Christian? I don't think I'm giving myself too much credit by saying no freaking way.
Yeah, I don't know if it's part of my Mennonite background or if it's the Canadian heritage part that we tend to be a little bit less on that side as well. But I like to think that I also would have eschewed completely this whole disavowed myself of that kind of message for sure.
Okay.
I like to think, but who knows, Seth? Maybe you maybe would have gone along with it.
No, I think, I mean, you and I, even when we were in the faith, saw the charlatans, a lot of them, right? Most of the pastors and spiritual leaders that we encountered were sincere believers who were trying to do the right thing. And I know in some atheist circles, they don't like to give this credit. I mean, many, 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 many religious people are really good people. Like I wasn't evil when I was a Christian, right? I was just a victim of bad ideas. And those people are out there. They want to raise their kids and they want to live peacefully and they want to love people. That's why we see all of these sort of egalitarian, progressive iterations of Christianity that are really anti-biblical, but they've made a Christianity where God loves gay people and God would never make a hell. And we all are going to live together and we're all one big brother. And I mean, and all those things. That's lovely. That's not biblical Christianity. But it shows you that many people are listening to their moral compass and then they're fashioning their theology to try to fit that. That tells me that they're trying to be a good person. I mean, that's fair, isn't it, Paul? I'm not being too charitable.
I think so. If there has to be a Christianity, I'm actually happy that there's a denomination system and that some of them are willing to split over some of those, how you treat other people, so that there's at least segments that are problematic in maybe not fewer ways, but different ways at least. Because this notion I often make fun of that, only Christians say, well, that guy is not a Christian, right? Christians are the ones that pointing to each other to disavow each other. And that's not an atheist job to decide who is or is, who is. But in a way, the way you describe it, I'm actually thankful that mechanism is there. And I think that's what I would have done when I was a Christian. I considered hardly anyone to be one because they weren't living up to, what Jesus's messages were. So, I guess there's good and bad in there.
Were you judgy? You were a judgy.
I was super judgy. Yeah, based on if people couldn't rattle off the books of the Bible or that they were. I mean, I was in a community if you drank or played cards or gambled or saw an R-rated movie, like that was enough, right? You were
Oh,
just out. So yeah, I was in
I
that
just
group.
Paul sitting back there with his shirt buttoned all the way to the top collar and his
Yeah,
polyester starched sleeves, looking down upon the unwashed, saying, "You have fallen far, ye
only,
posers."
only 2 buttons on the suit because 3 buttons is prideful.
Okay. Are you ready to try to talk to some people here? And
Let's do some calls. As
I've
fun as it
got
is to talk to you.
an area code 248 out of Michigan. It is Greg. Greg, you're with us. Can you hear us, my friend?
Yes, I can, Seth and Paul. Hey, I got to ask you,
Welcome.
Seth, real quick. Can you hear me?
I can. What's your question?
Hello? Oh, I just got to ask you real quick. Were you ever in radio?
Oh, yeah.
You got a great voice.
I did Christian radio for 12 years, 1990 to 2002. We played Amy Grant, Stephen Curtis Chapman, Michael W. Smith, Whiteheart, Third Day, etc. And so that was a big part of it was my first real career. So yeah, but thanks for noticing. Hopefully it's a good thing. A lot of people hate the cadence of my voice because they think I either sound like a preacher or I sound like AI. So I don't know how to receive.
No.
Okay.
You're fantastic. I'm known as Mr. Positive. I'm on Detroit radio, national radio, and TV with sometimes Chris Cuomo. But
Oh,
I like that you talk about politics too. But I got to ask you guys, and it's going to be a little bit nebulous, but I want to prove, not necessarily prove, trust me. I've read Rand and I've read so many philosophers and Aristotelian logic and logic by Platonism. But if you will, we talk about ideas. God is an idea, okay? We know that by definition, we predicate God's existence on faith, which is the negation of empirical evidence. But using nomenclature, can you, in the same vein, for instance, desk, table, chair is what? It's considered furniture. It's an abstraction. Could you arguably say that God exists in the realm of the totality of the conscious and unconscious mind and the unity of all people, and that's where God lies? Yes, I know your argument. I know Dillahunty's argument. I've read them all, heard them all, and all that stuff. Would you say that God is an idea that could arguably exist within the Platonist realm ideology, Seth and Paul?
I'm confused.
I know I'm drawing from existentialism, Rollo May, Platonism.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, if you want to reference all of these supposedly lofty ideas, wonderful. But let's distill it down and speak to me like you're
Okay,
talking to a child. Okay? What is it that
okay,
you are saying would serve as a proof for God? I mean, I hear a shade of the ontological argument, but I don't think that's what the argument you're making. What are you saying
right.
it would be evidence for God?
The evidence would be in the same vein as ideas exist that cannot be contemplated materialistically. I can't touch it. I can't taste it. I can't see it. I can't feel it. It's in the ideological realm of Plato. Um, there's a big picture. Aristotle points to reality, and Plato points to the air. And I guess the two dynamics, materialism and ideology, can coexist, and they're predicated upon each other. How do we become better? How do we understand things that we don't understand now? I guess, Seth, I'm just talking about ideas. Do ideas exist that we cannot prove? And do they? For instance, love. It does exist. It's not tangential. It's not materialistic. But does the word love and things that are abstractions or that we designate as emotion, do they exist? And I
All right,
guess
hang on.
in
Hang
the
on. If I may. Greg,
Okay, yes.
for the sake of momentum. Paul, did you have any thoughts on what we've heard so far?
I had questions, but I will let you speak
No,
because
no, no, no.
they're just follow-up questions.
I mean,
I mean, are you
mostly what I'm hearing, Paul, is if we can think shit up, does that validate it as something that may live in the immaterial world, including a god? If it is only in the
But
abstract, and
I'm not making it up. I'm not necessarily making it up. I'm giving you words that people understand as love,
other people have
hope.
said, but I think I
Yeah.
disagree with the premise. Love is a great
Okay.
example. Love in the abstract, we understand. How do you prove love? Well, I'm one of those people that thinks actually you can see love demonstrated through word and action. So you can see if someone does or does not love someone else through the evidences of what they do and say. So I don't think things like love exist merely in the abstract, an immaterial box that then you can sort of navel gaze over. I think these are things that do manifest themselves in physical material ways in the real world. And so, and
Okay.
if we decide that we're going to lock the abstract idea in a different box over here, then you could say
Yeah.
anything or think anything about anyone anywhere and say it's proven because it's immaterial and it exists in our minds and thoughts, right?
Okay. But when you say that you can demonstrate love, could that be construed as possibly kindness? Could it be construed as something other than how you deem to be the definition of love?
I don't know that
And if so,
I don't know that
okay.
I see kindness is a subset of love. I mean, these two are joined. They are related in many ways. If not a direct love for a person, not necessarily a romantic love, maybe a love for the human condition, a love of the good. I don't know what any of this
So
has
you're
to do with
talking about
proving a
degrees.
Sure. I mean, we live in a world where things
Okay.
are relative. I may love this more than that. I may despise this more than that. I may have an attraction to this or a repulsion from that more than another. I don't know what any of this has to do with God. So tell me how any of it proves God, Greg.
It it doesn't, but there is no, this is between you and I and the thousands that are listening and watching. There is no concrete evidence to prove the existence of God. It's antithetical to what the concept of God is. Yes, I am probably an atheist, but I'm still searching, and I've read all the arguments. I've heard your beautiful arguments, Dillahunty's, Dawkins, it goes on, Bogosian, and it goes, I've heard them all. And I'm just
So
trying to broaden my horizons, and I wanted to broaden them with you because I know you're an intellectual, and I just
I'm
Greg?
feel
really
What
that,
not. No,
Greg? What's
I'm
the
really
point
not.
here,
Go ahead, Paul. Please hit it.
Greg? So
yes,
ultimately, all I'm hearing is saying, so what? Like, so if you want to say that there can be an abstraction of a concept, and if you want to
yeah.
say that what God is God didn't create the universe, God didn't uh, part the Red Sea, God doesn't care what I eat for dinner, God doesn't care who sleeps in my bed. But you know, some subset of humans have an abstraction of this. Some set of humans have an abstraction that they think the Force is real. The Force is defined in Star Wars. It could be defined in exactly the same way that you're just describing. Like, if you just want to say that some subset of people can agree on they don't even agree that there's an abstraction out there, and I just want to call that God and put my faith in it. So what? Like, if it's not real, can't be proven, doesn't dictate anything about us. Is this just I talking, late night after a joint? What are we talking about here?
Well, because I know that you cannot prove and demonstrate evidence for God with the understanding and the caveat of what is the definition of proof and what is the definition of evidence. And it has to be, demonstrated materialistically, arguably, understanding with the concepts of mathematics, but that forego mathematics.
Disagree with most of that, but keep rolling.
Yeah, me too. Me
Yeah,
too.
I mean, it's just the
No,
idea
just keep
that,
rolling. Yep.
okay, I have nothing more to say. I feel that I just wanted to know your points of view. Like I said, I'm probably an atheist. I know the arguments, and I know it's such an uphill battle to prove the existence of God. What is the definition of existence? It's the definition of having an existence within the realm of existence.
Hang on. I think Paul wants to speak to a little bit of this before we let you go. Go ahead.
Well, I'm back to what is the point? Do you think that this abstraction cares what you do in your life?
Regardless, because it's an abstraction, I'm trying to define the best of anybody's ability to prove the existence of God through an abstraction. I cannot tell you if he cares about what I do, how I do it, whether he created the universe, the multiverse.
So this is a thought. This is a thought project to entertain yourself. And the other weird thing that you said up front was that you called in. You said you already know what we think about this, which is the other thing I just wanted to cycle back to. It's like if you already know what Seth and I thought about this before you called in. What was the point? And I'm curious what you thought that we thought.
No, I know exactly where you're coming from. I just wanted to hear your perspective on a maybe different philosophical point of view, because I know that Seth and you and Matt demonstrate, show me proof, evidence. Yeah. And I know that it's impossible. And I'm telling everybody in the world that you cannot prove the existence of God because it is a dichotomy that you cannot prove.
But then what is the point? What's the point of trying to create useless descriptions that don't mean anything?
That's a good point. I don't necessarily know if it's useless, because by me inquiring and asking queries, I think we glean and we learn at a deeper level. That's how one learns. That's how we grow. When you and Seth have a disagreement, and anybody that you know, I've read the books, that how do you get to the truth? Everyone thinks they have the truth. Only through discussion and compromise and really vigorous debate will you get to the truth. And most people think that they know the truth.
So you called in for us to talk you out of this? Rather than to convince us?
No. I just wanted to know at least this philosophical question.
Okay.
You couldn't talk me out of it because I'm probably in agreement with you guys.
Okay.
I just wanted to hear your perspective.
I stopped caring a while back, Seth, so I'm going to let you take it back.
I'm good. Greg, thank you so much for the call, and have a wonderful week. Okay?
Thank you, and everybody go for your dreams. Thank you, guys.
All right. Yep. See you later. What the hell did we just talk about?
I don't know.
First of all, I'm so weary of people telling me that the nature of God makes him, her, or it unprovable materially. I just don't understand this argument. You know, beyond the trying to nail the jello against the wall, he was talking about mathematically and all these other things. And I'm like, well, a God, even let's call him an immaterial deity that interacts with the physical world, then it still becomes a scientific question. We're talking about an interaction, a supernatural engagement through that realm, through the membrane into the physical world. This is something that can be seen and proven and demonstrated, tested and retested. And yet so many times when people talk about God, it immediately becomes this thing, well, if he was demonstrable, then he wouldn't be godlike. I mean, did I hear him right, Paul? Or maybe he said something else and I just misinterpreted that.
He did. I also feel like he wants to weirdly salvage just any definition that he can label God. I don't want to psychoanalyze, but I was hearing in there that his project was to find a definition of God that people could be okay with without actually having to change their views. And so if Seth and Paul, okay, God may not be real, but he's an abstract concept. I'm like, okay, whatever. I don't know.
I feel a little too, and I don't want to be a total jerk about this, but I feel like I appreciate the kind words. I really do appreciate the compliments. They may come from a sincere place, but I feel kind of buttered up. You know, like we know you're a great thinker, Seth. I know me. I'm the guy that took 30 years to figure out that donkeys could not speak Hebrew. in the book of Numbers. I'm that guy, right? I used to think people lived to be 900 and that flying chariots could fly up into the sky, and that I used to believe all kinds of crazy. I don't always think in a very. I'd like to think maybe I'm a little better, but I am not a great mind. I'm a guy just trying to figure it out, and I'm relatively good at stringing sentences together. That's my spiritual gift. But to sort of flatter me into saying I'm a great intellectual, well, that tells me right there you haven't been paying a lot of attention. I'm just some schlub trying to get along. You know what I'm saying? I'm just trying. I'm just doing my best. I don't know. Anything else before I move on that?
No, let's get a new caller, new thoughts.
Don't you feel like that? Why would the nature of God have to be immaterial? I mean, why could a God not exist? Omnigod, right? Omnipotent, omniscient, omnibenevolent. Why does that God not automatically not get a physical body and measurable, tangible characteristics? Why does it have to be something that exists out beyond the measurements of science? I don't get that. Do
And
you?
if he was as evident as the sun, say, there's relatively little debate whether the sun exists. If God was constantly, in the sky or whatever, which of those attributes would it actually take away from him? Which of those attributes is harmed by being obviously evident? That doesn't change his all powerfulness, all knowingness, all benevolent, whatever you want to say. Being omni-evident seems like it should be a great making property. But I don't know.
Yeah. And if you were an omnibenevolent deity, you would make a version of yourself. You would manifest in a way that made
Right.
you absolutely irrefutable to anybody who was looking for proof that you existed, who you were, what your nature was, and what you wanted from your minions, right? The fact that the Lord works in mysterious ways and that thousands of splintering denominations of just Christianity can't even agree on the basics of the faith tell me that there isn't an omnibenevolent deity out there. He's just letting everybody scramble and chew each other to pieces. There's an atheist on the line here. I know I said theist first, but this is an interesting question out of Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Hi, what do I call you? What's your name?
Mental.
Mental. All right, Mental. You are on with Seth and Paul. Welcome. What's on your mind?
Hello, thank you.
We are all ears. What's up?
Sorry, I'm still pretty new to this, and I'm not really used to making these kind of calls. So I was listening to the show earlier, and it got me thinking. There's this back and forth between can you prove God? And it's like, well, can you prove that there isn't God? And it's going back and forth. And I thought, would there ever be an end to this? And then I wondered, what might that look like? And it brought to mind the question of, could a theist society even function without religion?
Give me an example of a theist society.
Well, I guess USA. I believe the majority of the population believe in some sort of deity, do they not?
Yeah, in some way they say they do. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's hard to deny that there aren't a huge impact of the religion in the society. There are churches, there are religious schools, and even on the money it says "In God We Trust." And though I'm from Canada, it's even in our national anthem.
Okay, I'll just pinball this over to Paul. Do you think that theist societies could still function without religion?
Well, I think I just definitionally I don't know how that would work because by definition, a theistic society is has to be putting a god first in some way, and by any definition of religion that I think is useful, that would be if you stripped away all notions that would be really religious. I don't even see how it would continue to be a theistic society. So, Mental, are you asking whether Canada and America could exist, or would survive finding out that there was no God, for example? Is that the question? I guess I'm not sure I'm understanding the question.
Let me pinball on that.
I
Maybe I'm hearing something different than Paul is,
Yeah,
and you can
maybe.
speak to us both. What
okay.
I'm hearing is, as we see religion as a really effective social glue, and we
Mhm.
see churches as institutions where people gather and they form tribes. It becomes
Mhm.
the music they listen to, their friends, their inner
Mhm.
circle, their
Exactly.
childcare, their schools, all those. So you're saying if all of that was to disappear, do I think it would just be anarchy? Do you think those societies would just crumble because the theistic framework was suddenly stripped away?
Exactly. Yes. And I only wonder about that because um, so many people have made their beliefs so much a part of them that it's like they don't even seem, some of them don't even seem capable of letting go of that. They seem like, because you always see that in these arguments, that they keep on going in a circle. It's like they cannot do anything to deviate from their line of thinking. And so if like that was taken away from their society and they weren't able to, function or like go about their day-to-day lives without that, and like would they be able to even handle it? Like,
All right, Paul, I
because
got
what if
thoughts. You want to go first, or you want me to jump in?
Go first.
I'm easy.
Yeah, go
Okay,
ahead.
mental, and it's wild calling you mental, but it's also kind of cool. So I'm just going to keep doing it. Mental.
yes.
Would you concede that many of the best things that religious structure provides don't require a God belief? In other words, what are some of the things that attract people most to religion and religious communities? Because I'm not convinced it's theology. I think people are bound into religious cultures for reasons of identity and reasons of community, right? You come together. You are missed if you are not there. You get to share music together. That gives you a rush, the same
Hmm.
kind of rush you can get at a concert. You
Oh,
meet
for
each
sure.
other's needs. You're in the hospital. You can bring food and gifts and help pay their bills and do a meal truck or something for them. You talk about a sense of purpose. Who am I? What do I want? What goals do I want to achieve? What kind of a world do I want to build in? All of these things the church does. I'm not saying it
Hmm.
does accurately as far as facts, but it does it effectively. But I
Hmm.
think those things don't require a God. I think that more than that, they're human things. So, what if we were to look at, hey, let's say that theistic or hell, even deistic communities uh, where all of a sudden everybody realized, holy shit, there is no God. And here's definitive proof. What are we going to do now? Right? Would you
Hmm.
concede that maybe what they were doing was not necessarily a God thing as much as it was a tribe thing, a group, a family, a structure? And the things that the church has done best don't require a God, and human beings could do without all of the mythological background and baggage. I mean, does that sound reasonable?
It does, and I do think that that is a main core factor in what religion like brings to people. I do think that is a main concept, but I believe that there's another reason, and that is to try to make sense of something that cannot make sense of, and escape the existential dread.
Oh, I mean, I totally agree. People look to the skies in moments of crisis, right? Whether right or wrong,
Hmm.
whether no matter what God they might be looking to, or the cosmos in general, or karma, cosmic justice, you name it. But people
Hmm.
tend to do this in times of desperation. It's a great explanation for why people pray in many times in the darkest of days. The fear of
Hmm.
death explains why we've constructed posthumous existence scenarios where we don't just go on, but we go to a happy place where there's no pain and suffering, and everybody gets a mansion and walks on a street of gold, and there's the pearly gate, and there's the family dog, and all those things. So, I
Exactly.
mean, but we can trace this back to us as human beings and our nature, not as a proof for deity. I don't want to monopolize this. Paul, I'm going to hand it over to you. Do you have any thoughts on
The
this sucker?
yeah, the other note that you were talking about though was like individuals, and I think you were referring to individual ability to be able to handle if there was, say, a disproof for God, or if for some reason the religious infrastructure was stripped from them. How would individuals deal? And I would have to agree that there would absolutely be individuals who would deal poorly and or completely double down. I feel like if Thor came and announced that my pantheon of gods has always been true and is definitely true, I feel like the other major religions would double down and find ways to adapt to this notion that Thor is in the sky right now telling them something else. But that doesn't mean, I guess that doesn't mean much to me, the fact that individuals wouldn't handle it well. Some people ask, should I attempt to deconvert my aging grandmother for whom faith is, all that's keeping her going? And my answer is always like, no, leave her alone. She's in the hospital. She's not doing more people harm, right?
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
and that is why when you see something like evolution hit, right? When evolution started becoming more widely accepted, you didn't get the church adopting it. In fact, the church fought against it. But fast forward 100 years later, and now 2/3 of Christians accept that evolution has a role somewhere, right? These are things that happen generationally, and I can't even imagine what it would be. What would have to happen for religion to be stripped away in one generation? Like, that's, I guess, my problem with the thought experiment, is that it doesn't seem like there's anything that could rip away the bandage that quickly. And maybe that is a good thing for the sake of the handful of people who are so stuck. But the other thing that struck me is that people are stuck on atheist side of the fence with similar closed hearts, shall we say, or you name the position on on the Oilers going to win the cup, whatever you name the thing. And I say that Edmontonian, who probably doesn't care about hockey, but I love it. The you name the thing. There are people who are not coming by those things fully informed or even fully willing to be informed, and I don't want to paint the brush that is exclusively religious people per se. Just one of our natures is we have these heuristics that help us make our decisions easy, and it's difficult to shake us out of those ruts sometimes. So I just didn't want to paint religions exclusively in that camp. But those were some of my
that makes sense.
Side thoughts.
What's your opinion? Like, let's say that theist societies, or those who are connected around religious themes, cultures, whether it's the music, the dress, the church structures, the whatever. Let's say all of a sudden there is definitively no God. Boom. What do you think would happen to those places? Many of those places.
Well, as you mentioned, or I can't remember which one, I'm so sorry, that there would be a lot of people that would be in denial, and that would probably be important, so that way, we wouldn't see like this insane kind of chaos happen, because I'm sure you both are aware of those times when people lost their mind, whether like if their favorite sports team won or lost, like they would go nuts. I imagine something similar might happen then. And especially since I'm kind of alarmed by how many people say that they need religion in order to do good things. That's really concerning. And I'd like to think that they can just be good without their God. But I don't know, maybe there could have been some that are all like, oh, there's no God, oh, there's no consequences, I'm going to go start like wreaking havoc and just killing and thieving and
the
doing
flip
all
side
these
of that
horrible
coin,
things.
Mental, is that there are some people who say they can go out and do whatever they want and just ask for forgiveness. So I mean, you could play that either way. I remember I was watching a debate, and one of the apologists was on stage, and he actually said the words, "You know what? If I didn't have God, if I wasn't a Christian, I'd probably be a murderer." He actually said the words, and everybody gasped. And the atheist who was debating him said, "Well, actually, then in your case, I'm kind of glad you're a Christian," you know,
Yeah.
and just for the sake of everybody in the room, kind of thing. And I know it's a lot more
Yeah.
complicated than that.
Hmm.
I don't know, Paul. I don't want to spend too
Well,
much time
I
over
guess
you.
my
What do you
last
think?
thought is that I would have said the same when I was a believer. I would have thought of myself that removing God from my life would actually mean that I would become an immoral person. I
Mm.
think that is a perspective I would have had. Uh, and so, but it's one of those you never know what's going to happen until it happens. And it turns out, I actually think on an ethical level, I'm more, I'm at least more thoughtful about my actions and how it impacts others now, as on this side of things, than I was when I just thought the book had the answers and I didn't have to think about what happened because the book had the answer, right?
Hmm.
So again, it's one of those things. People may self-report that it's that important, and as Seth was alluding to, maybe that for a lot of people, the Christianity they adhere to has nothing to do with theology. It has to do with doing what the group expectations are. And I feel like largely, if group expectations changed but continued to be ethical, those people would just flow right along. I don't know. Um,
Yeah.
Seth, is that compatible?
Oh, we can. I think we can what if it all day. Any final
Yep.
thoughts, mental, before we move on?
Well, yeah, of course, there's always what ifs, and it can go on forever, and it's always only ever speculation. But I don't know. I find it fun to think about those sorts of things, and but I also couldn't help but think of situations when, if they just took out like theist religion out of society in every form and shape, like even the churches, the schools, like if they like replaced the churches with like community centers and they just made the religious schools just regular public schools or maybe even private schools, I don't know. But if they did
Well,
that, I imagine there could probably be riots.
I think we are. I mean, we're evolved primates, right? We are
Right.
we are meat covered skeletons, and we are not immune from. We gravitate into tribes. We are tribalistic, and we have to be aware of that
Yeah.
because tribes can be wonderful things, groups of shared interest and goals, and a way to really color the human condition with people we relate to. I mean, I love the positive iteration of tribes, but of course, we've seen how tribalism can other anybody else who is different or who disagrees. And people like
Yeah.
to talk about religions as being religions of love. They are great uniters. We're an open tent. Everybody come as you are. Jesus accepts you no matter what, blah, blah, blah. But I see religions also as great dividers. I mean, why
Hmm.
in the world would you have thousands of different denominations? Why would you have so many splinters of just one denomination? The Independent Baptists, they set off from the First Baptists, which are from the Free Will Baptist, and then there's the Southern Baptist, and they all disagree. And I think these are, they become sub tribes and then sub tribes. If we were to remove the idea of God and then maybe churches were to go away, would that perhaps make people less prone to other someone else because there would be one less reason to do so? I don't know the answer, but
Oh.
it would be interesting to play a version of The Sims where we could see this situation play out, don't you think?
For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Mental, thanks for calling. It's been nice talking to you.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
All right. Take care.
Right.
You guys too.
Did I hear Oilers, Paul? Did I hear?
Yeah,
Is that
she's
your
from.
team?
It is my team, and also Mental said they were from Edmonton, which
Edmund.
is the home of that team. So, and in Edmonton right now, it is doesn't matter how late it is at night. It's going to be the sun is shining bright up north there, so that's great.
So, what's the big rival with the Oilers? Like every team, most teams have like a
Well,
nemesis.
so regionally, it would be the Calgary Flames, right? They're 3 hours away. So
Uh,
they have had some spirited debates. Unfortunately, it's been a few decades since one or the other. Well, they've both been good at the same time, so that makes it tricky. The one of the,
yeah.
but yeah, yeah.
Hey, let me throw this out. I really want to know what you think. When I hear this, and I don't want to approach it without compassion, because you talk. I don't know if it was your mother that you said, or your grandmother, who you're not going to go in and say, there is no God, because that would be
Right.
cruel given her
Yep.
circumstance, right? But there is a thinking that, well, some people out there simply, they can't get along without God, without the idea of Jesus or whoever. And they don't have the capacity in their lives, and they're probably not going to get it. And let's pat them on the head because, maybe they're the people who need religion or they need God. And I worry that we're entering a kind of bigotry of lowered expectations where we say, oh, you're just not smart enough to figure it out. And I'm not talking about somebody who is, the cost benefit is, it's going to cause much more grief and harm emotionally than it's worth, and those things do exist. But I mean, I don't know, is there a point where we say, maybe I'm not giving people enough credit? Maybe I'm coddling them unnecessarily. What's your perspective on that?
Well, my perspective on that is very sharp. Like that's why I have the question that I was answering about the grandma is one of the hardest for me because I would have been that lost cause. People would have absolutely pointed to me. That guy memorizes scripture as a hobby. That guy thinks that there were dinosaurs on the ark. That guy lives in a region where everyone around him, he doesn't know a non-Christian. I would have been one of those guys. So I do resist that patronization, I guess, that that person needs the crutch.
Yeah.
All that way. But I do feel like for some people, religion has, and it's unfortunate, but that they've built it into their lives such that it would be more disruptive than to other people. Like there's some spectrum here where stopping to believe in God is going to have some impact to some people and more impact to others. And this is partially why my whole I don't think we should ever ban religions. I think the only fighting against religions we should do is to encourage attrition. Really, like just attrition encouragement is the whole way to do it. For exactly that shock reason. No, I don't. I'm with what your sentiment was there. I don't think there's a lost cause problem. I don't think anyone is that lost cause. In fact, even that dying grandmother in the hospital probably could figure out if you really wanted to argue her out of it. But at some point, just with end of life things, there
Sure.
is certain traumas that you don't necessarily cause. But I do think if people are walking around with the kind of epistemology that lets them think that religion is true, they are just doing that in itself is a harm, right? So I would encourage improvement of epistemology of all people.
It's one of the reasons why if someone goes to the funeral of a religious person, and I'm one of those guys who thinks your memorial service should reflect who you were, what your values are, and be true to your wishes, which is why I've left strict instructions. Don't you dare let anybody try to preach at my funeral. And if you do, I want them, thrown out on their ear kind of thing. But yeah, I think more than an atheist, I want to be a humanist. So the compassionate human being does not walk into a moment where people are raw from grief and a religious person has just died and they just mentioned Jesus from the podium. And I walk in and say, this is all bullshit. There is no God. What's the matter with you delusional people? Because that's not the compassionate, empathetic, humanist thing to do. And it's all situational. It doesn't mean that so-and-so's with Jesus now, or that I'm validating their faith, but I'm saying that there is a time and place. There are there are situationals that come into play that are, I don't know, they're often hard to pin down. It's hard for me I mean, I don't know if you could even put it in a book and say, we'll do it here, but don't do it there. Do you have that
Well,
challenge,
it's on the
Paul?
spectrum. It's on the spectrum of even though the religion aside, there's a notion of there's a time to be right, and there's a time to be loving. So you don't need to necessarily point out that someone looks particularly unattractive in a particular outfit. It's not always helpful truth to announce. If it can be true that that's not always a helpful truth to announce, then at least maybe you can apply that to other parts of your lives, I guess.
All right. Let's see. I've got Another theist calling out of Georgia. Alex, you're on with Seth and Paul. Welcome. Can you hear us?
Yes, sir. I hear you. How you doing,
Welcome to
Seth?
the
How you doing,
show.
Paul?
Doing all right.
Excellent.
Welcome.
What's on your mind?
Yeah, well, I appreciate y'all. What y'all doing?
Excellent. What's on your mind?
Well, I spoke to Promise and Matt. I never really got clarification. You know, I watch y'all's videos and I really appreciate what y'all do. I value your ideas. You know what I'm saying? So I want to like run something by you. I wasn't able to run past Matt. Okay. Have you ever heard of pantheism? Am I saying that right? Pantheism.
Pantheism.
Yes, but tell us what that means to you, because it may not mean the same to us.
Okay. So I guess I have modified it a little bit. I believe that everything that's alive is a source of God. I believe that we are God. There is no God. There's just living things. Is this making sense?
No, but I understand the words and the sentences, so carry on.
Right. I just wanted to get your view on it because, you know, I had a near-death experience probably like 4 days ago, and it got me thinking about the importance of my own life. Right. So I began to think that there's just no way that everything that's alive, you know, on this planet or off, you know, there's no God, right? But everything that lives, the life force that we have, can't be replicated by scientists. And just think about how minerals from the earth can be arranged in a way that forms a living being like a human. Okay, now that has to mean something. You know, I think we're all connected.
Why must it mean something?
Mainly because if it's not, that's a shame, and it's a wasted opportunity for something higher.
Okay, but is that a good reason to accept an idea? Is that I don't like the consequences of that idea being true?
Oh, well, there's nothing going to come from it. You're not going to heaven. You're not going to hell. When you die, that's it. But the living force that you have is connected somehow, okay? Different levels of consciousness. Animals have consciousness.
Alex, I want to go back a step. Alex, I just want to go back a step. Do you agree that you were making an argument from consequences? That you were just saying, if this isn't true, it would be a shame, is an argument from consequences, and that is not a good way to come to a conclusion.
That is true. That is not a good way to come to a conclusion. You're right.
Okay.
Really, this whole, I'm a lifelong atheist. Okay, like I was born an atheist, and my mom tried to drown me with religion. So my dad, he was a deacon in the church. It never stuck, but I have more of a scientific mind, and I do believe in something being destroyed. It can't be destroyed.
So, with your scientific mind, would you agree that scarcity is what makes something more valuable than something that's plentiful?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So
the rarity, yes, sir.
Generally, yeah, we equate rarity with more valuable. So why would your life be a waste if it was very short and finite, i.e. scarce, versus my life is more meaningful if it is infinite, i.e. not scarce at all?
Well, no, not infinite. Not infinite. What we call you is just an amalgamation of things around you, the food you eat, and the thoughts that you were having, people speaking to you, events you have in your life. That's going to go away forever. But what makes you live is not. You know, and I'm talking about plants.
Okay, but why are you inserting God in? So we're saying the same thing there,
no
right?
God.
Then we're saying
no
life
God.
is valuable because it's finite. We're saying the same things. Why? What utility are we getting? Since you seem to be making a utilitarian argument that it would be better if this was true, what utility is adding God in this mix? What does it add to any equation?
Well, like I told my people when we had the argument about God, God is not going to save you. You know what I'm saying? So the idea of something watching over you isn't ridiculous. But
All right.
I just feel like I don't know. I wanted to get y'all's opinion about it. I didn't want to do too much talking.
I
kind
did
of
most
wanted
of
to
the
hear what
speaking.
y'all
So
have to.
Seth appears to have thoughts. So I'm going
No,
to bounce it
I
back
have
over to
no
him.
thoughts. All I have is the answer is 42. That's the only answer I can give you to this. I don't know how we're inserting God into these questions, and then mostly assertions, claims that I haven't heard remotely buttressed. Alex, I'm sure your intentions are pure, but I don't think we can help you in this conversation. Okay?
Okay, I just wanted to get your view on pantheism or whatever. But,
Yeah, appreciate you.
okay.
Thanks for calling the show. All right, have a good day. I'll see you later. That's all right. Go ahead, Paul. I'm sorry. I was
just saying, I don't think it's true. I don't think it can be demonstrated, and I don't think it's helpful.
Sorry. I'm a momentum guy. I honestly, the second I feel my eyes start to twitch and the room begins to spin and I start to pray for merciful death, I think perhaps it's time to move on to a more coherent conversation.
Very good. Yep.
Let's talk about. Let's take a look at Blake, who has been on hold for almost an hour out of California. Thanks for your patience. Blake, you're on with Paul and Seth. What's up?
How you doing? It's good to meet you guys. How are you both?
Excellent.
Doing all right. Welcome.
Good. Yeah, I'm from Newfoundland, Canada, just north of Paul. I'm calling regarding I'm a volunteer for Recovering from Religion. I want to give a shout out to Flabbergasted. It's a great colleague. So calling tonight because we had applied to appear with Recovering from Religion at a Pride event in St. John's. So St. John's Pride NL host their annual event. It's on July 20th. We applied. On June 2nd, we were accepted to have a booth set up. And so we had Dr. Dale Ray involved. We were ready to go. We had back and forth, setting up logistics, setting up our booth, about, the fact we're a nonprofit, getting our fees in place. And on July 2nd, we had our approval withdrawn. And they cited reasons that they are, acknowledging the fact that they want to represent and keep their queer faith-based organizations intact. So we contacted our ambassador director, Steve, and he reached out to St. John's Pride trying to get some answers. We waited a couple days. We didn't get any answers. So then, we sent another email to them and we said, waiting for a reply. If we don't get a reply, we will go to other avenues to collect information. They took it as a threat. So basically they said, you've confirmed what we thought. And in their reply, they had referenced, a number of basically, they had said we have a lack of direct affirming representation of the 2S LGBTQIA plus individuals in our public materials and messaging that some of our community members, particularly those from the queer and trans-led faith communities, found alienating and troubling. So these were the reasons for our rejecting. So we sent, Daryl himself sent another email. We want to talk about it. We've attended over 100 Pride events in the last 5 years. One of our members has attended 30 Pride events since 1995. We have a strong representation in the 2S LGBTQIA plus community, including myself. And, we kind of asked for answers. We went to the city of St. John's for answers. I spoke to one of the counselors. They indicated that, St. John's Pride is an independent organization. They make their own decisions, but, they agree with our, request.
Yeah, Blake, if I may, sorry, just this show isn't particularly about, telling stories. this show is kind of, intended to. Did you have questions for us? I guess is the, this isn't necessarily a platform for as egregious as a as you were treated may be, and as how disconcerting. I was wondering if this was. Are you basically wanting to share this story, or do you have questions of Seth and I?
Or is there a way we can
Yeah.
help you?
Or is
we
there a way we
want-
can help? Because I would love to, but it does need to be a little more interactive than it has been.
Oh, please. My apologies. I just wanted to put it out there, and for you and Seth to know, we wanted to put it out there. Like, do we feel that representation from recovering from religion are we welcome at Pride events? Do you feel that we should have a strong voice in these places? That's what we want to know, because that's what we're reaching into the media, and we want to know, have we, as an organization, been there for these groups? And we want your opinion on that.
Well, if I can jump in, I actually spoke to Daryl Ray about this earlier today. And as I understand it, like a third of the leadership at recoveringfromreligion.org is LGBTQ. And the idea, anyone who has browsed any of the materials of RFR and not immediately seen advocacy and representation, I think is being absolutely dishonest, or they're just not looking. And I think most interestingly is I think one of the shot callers for the Pride event is actually a minister. So what I think may have happening, and this is just me inferring, this is speculation, but I think somebody at a church, and I'm glad, wonderful if you're an accepting church and you've got a wide open tent and your God would never judge gay people. You're not reading your Bible, but okay, I'll take that, right? But I have a feeling that somebody who is part of a ministry or a church saw recovering from religion, took it personally, and decided to give more latitude to themselves than they would give to someone in disagreement. I find that tragic. Now, what's interesting is that there will be, I believe, a table or a booth by Recovering from Religion nearby, legally nearby, but not at the Pride event. And they're going to have a big sign that says, Pride wouldn't allow us to participate. Stop over and ask us why. And so I think
Well, that's
there are gonna
great.
be
I
a
love
lot
that.
of interesting conversations for that. I'm going to try to blow the whistle on this on my own channel, which is probably a better venue for it. I'm still getting the info in, but tomorrow or Tuesday, I'm going to try to have a piece that sort of lays it all out. But thanks for bringing it to our attention. I understand your frustration. It's a double
And
standard.
Blake, I just
isn't it,
wanted to
Blake?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, Blake, that I wasn't my interruption there. My life would be drastically worse if RFR didn't exist. It was an important part for me of all this thing, and there's no doubt that the kind of person who attends Pride is disproportionately likely to need the services. So, so I hope that the spirit of my interruption was taken okay there.
It was taken completely good. No, that will be me.
Okay.
We have the sign up. I will be the one representing in St. John's Pride. We will be showing up. If we're escorted by the police, we will leave. But we're going to be there representing Recovering from Religion.
Amazing.
Let us know how that goes. Document, and that includes plenty of photos and video. Not that you're there to be an adjutant, but I think, or agitator, maybe. But I think it's important that we kind of see what happens and how and why, and who knows, maybe this will signal boost what you do more than it would have if you had simply tabled at the event itself. This is awareness that, maybe we can take the bug and make it a feature. But in the meantime, there is no doubt RFR is as pro LGBTQ as they come. And I just love that organization, Blake. Thanks for letting us know, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it. That's all we wanted to do. Thank you very much. Take care, guys.
You
Talk
betcha.
soon.
Take care. That kind of stuff just grinds my gears, Paul.
It's in my
It's like-
backyard too, and I didn't know about this. So now, who knows? Maybe me and Shannon and I will have to march and get out there.
Get out there, man. You're a good agitator. Tell them who you are. Don't you know who I
Well,
am? My name's on a
exactly.
movie poster.
Really,
God
I
damn it!
think I am.
I'm a
Yeah,
producer. I will make.
I do hope the local
I
media
will write
picks
a
up on it.
graphic novel. I will
That's right.
disparaging your name, and I will have it made into a film. Don't fuck with me, people. That's Paul. saying. So, it's like when people go to I don't know, do you have town council meetings, city council meetings where they give a prayer or invocation at the beginning? Does
Oh
that shit
yes,
happen
absolutely.
north?
Yeah,
Really?
it absolutely does, especially west. Yeah, the western provinces, it absolutely does, and it's
Here,
infuriating.
what happens is we have these fundy Christians, and they like, yes, dear Lord, thank you for this. Of course, no one's paying any attention because it's not about talking to God. They're just marking territory. Thank you, God, for the opportunity to convene at this council meeting, blah, blah, blah. Right. And then all
Yeah.
of a sudden, somebody of another religion comes in, especially the Satanists and the atheists, and they want equal time. And the Christians lose their minds. They're so freaking thin skinned and threatened. Has any of that happened in Canada?
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, it definitely does, for sure. I mean, one of the stories of how I was outed when I became Paulogia and people learned my real name was when Ken Ham was holding a homeschool conference in Alberta, and I was on the guest list to go because they didn't understand that the fact that I'd bought stuff from them didn't mean I agree with them, and they ended up figuring it out, and they ended up blocking me because rather than let me even attend their conference, they made a big deal to block me, which of course backfired because I ended up being on the news and talking about all the problems that Ken Ham brings to our conference because our government was buying his materials for schools. It ended up backfiring and giving them. Anyway, I love it when these kind of things happen. When their intended canceling ends up giving a bigger microphone to our side. Love it.
We're going through it in the state of Oklahoma, USA. We've got this. He's a nightmare of a human being. Ryan Walters, the superintendent of public instruction. Now, remember, Oklahoma is ranked 48th in education. Okay.
Okay.
And he wants to he was promoting the Trump Bibles at $65 a pop. He was wanting the state of Oklahoma to purchase Bibles for our schools because hashtag prayer in schools, I guess. And he wanted the Trump Bibles. Of course, you and I can go down to any store and buy, even if it was legal, constitutional, we can go down and buy one for a few bucks. Or you can go to Bible
Right.
Gateway or openbible.com. You can read the goddamn thing for free. And he's wanting to buy $65 Bibles by the thousands and have taxpayers pay for it. Well, now he has teamed up with PragerU. Now, for those who don't know what PragerU is, PragerU is not Prager University is not a university. It is a Christian propaganda mill that was founded by Dennis Prager, who is a right-wing talk radio host. Okay, they're not accredited. They don't have any credentials. They are not an educational entity in any way whatsoever. And our superintendent of public instruction is now injecting PragerU propaganda into public school curriculum. It is a nightmare. And of course, the Department of Education has been backing him up, but now there's some infighting. Taxpayers are pissed. Parents are pissed. It's probably going to go to the if it goes to the Supreme Court, then what? Because the court's compromised. It has just been a nightmare.
Or ignored.
So,
yeah.
Or they I don't know. It's just one of those things where we look around and we just shake our heads. Some shows are coming up this week on the line that you do not want to miss, my brothers and sisters in the Lord. Tomorrow night, it's going to be Skeptalk. It is Blitz PhD and Forrest Valkai joining each other to co-host at 6 o'clock Central. Chewed Gum on Tuesday, the 15th. Alyssa Lube and Taylor SH going to be there. What's SH stand for? Taylor SH? That's all I see.
Skeptical heretic. She's new.
Thank you, skeptical heretic. The voice of God is female. Just literally came out of nowhere and gave me the wisdom that I needed. It's going to be the hang up on Wednesday night, Matt Dillahunty and Jimmy Snow. And then the transatlantic call-in show on Thursday. Josie, is it Josie or I believe it's Josie, right? Caballero and Luxander going to be on Thursday night. That kicks off at, I've got this at 2 o'clock Central on Thursday. Is that right? Or is that a typo, Arden? The 17th, it says 2 p.m. Central, but I think that might be a typo. I think it's at 6.
YouTube will tell you. Just tune in.
Just have your people call my people. Okay.
That's right.
And we'll figure that out. Okay. Let's see. Let's talk to. I don't know what screening room means here,
I think
but I'm going to
John
try
is
it.
our next caller.
I see Mary out of Canada, so I'm going to try that one.
Oh,
Mary, are you there?
hi. I am here.
Welcome.
So I first of all, let me first say I am not a fairy. These are just the pronouns that I prefer used for me. Last time I called in, like there were a bunch of people in the chat, like saying, like asking if I'm a fairy. Fairy.
Mary, can you educate
But
me? Hang on, I'm curious. So I see FAE and FAER. Are these the prefixes for a fairy, or what do they mean?
uh, they are neopronouns. Like I identify as pan gender fae. Gender fae is like a fluid identity between female or woman and like neutral and like excluding all male identities. But like I identify with all of that at once.
Wow.
So I'm pan gender fae.
Wow.
So
Okay. Well,
so
this is
these
the
are the
wild.
pronouns
This is
that
like a
I
wide unknown world for in many ways. So I'm taking it all in. What can I do for you? What can Paul and I do for you, Mary?
So I was just wondering about deconstruction. Since last time I called in the show, I had a commenter ask about, or I asked if I was deconstructing, and I looked it up, and I think that's what I'm doing. But like a little bit more information would help a lot.
Well, I don't know if you're deconstructing. Are you asking what if there's a definition of deconstructing, or are you? I mean,
Like what I So the definition that I got was like essentially questioning the text, the religious text. I had previously identified as Christian. I don't anymore. I don't know what I identify as at this point. I still identify as some kind of religious, and I believe that there is some kind of God, but I don't know how anymore.
okay. Well, hang on,
Does
Mary.
that sound
Let's
like?
just stop there. Let's take it one point at a time. And I don't mean I'm not trying to stomp on you here, but let's take it. I don't want to get too deep into the weeds here until we address this at the beginning. So you're kind of religious. You think there may be something out there, but you're deconstructing, which means you're probably doubting, and you haven't really defined yourself with a marker with a proper name. I am this, I am that religiously. Is that close? Or you're just sort of seeking?
Um, yeah, something. So that sounds about right.
Okay.
Like
I'm going to back you off
I
of your
used to
phone
identify.
just a little bit. I don't know if it's a phone or a web mic. I'm going to back you off just a couple of inches because you're distorting just a little bit. Yeah, otherwise you sound great. Okay. But I'm going to move you back from your microphone just a hair for us. So, would you call yourself spiritual?
Definitely.
Okay. Can you, as best you can, in a nutshell, paint that picture? Describe what that means. Spirits, a God somewhere? Is there something? I mean, I don't know. I need to know more about where you are.
So I had like when I was a teen, uh I was relatively skeptical, but then eventually I ended up being like, no, actually, I'm just going to go along with the religion. I don't feel like resisting anymore, and I went along with that. But then I got to a point where I was like, no, any god that that would exist must be absolutely evil. And I was like, no, there's like that just doesn't make sense with my worldview anymore. but I felt like there was something missing until I spoke to people and tried to essentially find myself new evidence for, well, new spiritual evidence, like personal experiences for religion, and I did find that, and it feels like it was like divine experiences. And even if I know, like, consciously that this is just chemicals in my brain that will fire like how I want it to, that I still, it feels very meaningful and real to me.
Okay.
So that
All right.
that's
Hang on,
kind of
Mary. Paul, did
Mhm.
you have any thoughts on where we are to this point?
No, carry on.
Okay. Well, it sounds to me like you're already ahead of the ball on this one. You realize
Mhm.
that you are having what could be described as a spiritual experience. Those moments that we have all felt as
Mhm.
human beings, whether we ascribe them or attach them to a deity or spirits or divinity or whatever, but these sort of transcendent moments of joy and connection to people, to the world around us, to our own hopes and dreams, all of these things. And language betrays us, right? We don't have the language to really frame it because it's just so amazing and overwhelming. But even you know in your description that there is brain chemistry going on. There's some cause and effect going on. None of this is proof for a god or gods anywhere, not even necessarily spirits. It sounds to me like you are having a wrestling match between your logical self and your emotional self. The mind and the body are kind of going back. I know that this is just a human thing. I know it's brain chemistry, but but it feels so spiritual. Am I close?
Um, yeah, and I generally like over the past 4 years, I had been like, well, I know that it's like that, but I am going to keep my faith in the spiritual. And like over the past 4 years, most of that I did consider myself Christian because it was Christianity that kind of pulled me back in as well. But it's more recent that I was like, I don't believe Christianity like it says in the Bible, like at all. So I don't think I can call myself Christian anymore.
I don't
Um,
care. I don't
and
care
so
what you call yourself.
I'm
Like
just like,
I don't
yeah.
think you need to get hung up on a label at this point. I think
Mhm.
deconstruction is what? You're looking at the pieces, whether or not they fit or don't fit. You are reverse engineering your belief system to find out, is it sound? Does it hold water? Is it backed up in any way that it is credible? And if that's how you frame
Mhm.
deconstruction, it's not a destination really as much as it is a journey. You are trying to approach these things honestly to find out, well, I realize something kind of magical is going on here, but what really is it? It may not be actual spirits. It may be something else, but I sure do like how I feel when those experiences happen. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think
Mhm.
you're walking the road and you've got your eyes and ears wide open. I don't know anything out, Paul. I keep pinballing to you. I just want to make sure I'm not monopolizing
No,
this
that's good.
conversation.
I do appreciate that you talked about deconstruction, because if the word deconstruction is, what one of the things that prompted this, Seth described it very, very well. You're reverse engineering when you deconstruct a taco on the cooking show, right? They take all the various ingredients and set them out on the table, and you look at each one individually. And so if you've taken your faith apart and you said, well, look, this Bible part, all the part that's the Bible, uh, that doesn't ring true anymore. That doesn't seem to be holding water. Yes, you should absolutely remove that ingredient from however you reconstruct yourself. And I think in all the talk about deconstruction, we don't often talk about that reconstruction part, that you do have to actually put everything together and figure out what your life is. It sounds like that's the part where you're at. Some people do return to Christianity after their deconstruction, but it sounds like you're going to go at it without the Bible, without the baggage of Christianity, no matter what label you've gone to. So I encourage you to not let people in the comment section or any chat try and define what you are doing or to interfere with your journey, because everyone's is different, and sometimes we only learn after the fact which label we should apply to ourselves. I never dared call myself an atheist until I discovered a channel called The Thinking Atheist, and that channel allowed me to take that label upon myself, because it is what I had been experiencing. But don't let the language, the vocabulary, be the cart before the horse for you. So yeah, keep going where you're going, Mary.
Thank you. Also, I do want to say to like any religious people listening that like if you truly believe in your faith, then it should be able to stand up to this test. Like so, please go for it. Like it helps. It feels good. Even if like this last step is not
Sure. I
like
mean,
easy.
a belief statement should be a statement of confidence. It should welcome all challengers.
Mhm.
And any worthy deity would say, fine, test it. I'm not worried about this. It's totally sound. That's a good point, Mary. Thank you so much for calling us tonight. Be safe out there, okay?
Perfect. Thank you very much too.
Yeah.
Have a great night.
Thanks, Mary.
It's an interesting journey for a lot of people. I've noticed this is the case. And I want to know, what do you think? But so what I see a lot of, and I've been doing this for a while. So here's a fundamentalist, and they're right here at the bullseye, right? And I'm a Bible literalist, Adam and Eve, Noah's Ark, Jesus was born in the manger, all that stuff. Every word of the Bible is literally true. It is inerrant and perfect. And all of a sudden you run into some stuff that's problematic, and you're like, okay, well, most of the Bible's true, but some of it was, contextual, or it's for yesterday. And then, you take another step out. The Old Testament was for yesterday, the New Testament. Well, you take another step and say, a lot of it is just life lessons and they're stories, right? And that doesn't work. You take the next step and you're like, well, it's not a religion, it's a relationship. I don't care that much about the Bible because Jesus lives in my heart. And then maybe you take the next step where you think, well, I just think there's a God. And something made all this. And I've seen too much around me, and and then maybe you take the next step and say, well, I'm not, maybe I don't believe in God, but I am spiritual. And I find this is sort of and it's a natural, it's, who wants to jump from here all the way into the Mariana Trench? It's terrifying. So what we do is we sort of gradiate our steps. But once you get to that sort of spiritual step, a lot of people get stuck there because the repercussions of the next steps are, holy shit, there may not be a God or heaven or spirits or an afterlife or any of these other things. Maybe we're all on our own. And I think a lot of people hit that membrane, and the next steps are for them too difficult. And that's why they hang out in that, I'm not religious, but I am spiritual. Is there any merit to that? Or do you have maybe a different or better take on that?
Well, obviously there's merit to that approach, but I actually, in my limited time of being post-Christian, have found that it's that group of these spiritual but not religious people that end up being the most susceptible to false ideas of all kinds. Because at least when you're a fundamentalist, you have this very clear standard for yourself, and that I can talk to that kind of person and maybe justify from their scriptures or however you can point out the internal inconsistencies. But it's when you're just, oh, there must be something out there and it's super vague, that is actually it's an equally poor epistemology as relying on old texts, but it actually allows in a lot more problematic things. It can allow in not believing science or very readily accepting pseudoscience. Like, I actually, in a weird way, there's a lot of epistemological harm that comes from that position that is avoided in the more extreme position. So it's a frustrating one because you can't argue someone out of it because their own definition is nebulous and non thought out. So for me, I just don't find that that's the kind of person who hasn't put a lot of. Typically, it's the kind of person who hasn't put a lot of thought into it. They recognize that the major religions are false, but I don't want to think about the rest. And for me, maybe this is a little harsh, but that's a little bit lazy in my view.
It may be. I see too. I'm so glad you went there because it's such a good point. I was talking to somebody, a fellow activist and psychologist, and they were talking about how a lot of the people who come out of a fundamental faith like Christianity and they end up in that sort of spiritual but not religious kind of place, they then become, as you said, easy marks for other types of wrong thinking, and they get sort of sucked into other cults. And they said that the wellness industry is a great example. A lot of the people who were, primed by dogmatic, fundy faiths, but are no longer, then they might get sucked into vaccines will give you autism. And I've got cancer, but I'm not going to go to chemo. I'm going to eat shark cartilage and eat kale and go to light therapy and shit like that. They get sucked into something else. And apparently, according to the psychologist I was speaking with, we see that a little bit more with women. And then with men, they tend to get more into like flat earth, 9/11 conspiracies, the red pill culture, those types of cults as well. They sort of, maybe it's because they have been programmed to think in those terms, but now that they're not tethered to a specific dogma, like you said, maybe their hooks get into some other damaging doctrine, dogma, or scam. So that's interesting.
Coming to accept that I don't know is a valid answer, and coming to accept that we probably don't have more life than what we have here. I just think those are harsh realities that an adult human needs to get to, right? That in order to really live an epistemologically sound life, you kind of just have, as terrible and as frustrating and as horrible as those realizations are, you kind of have to rip that Band-Aid off. And I felt so much better when I finally did.
But before I take these last two calls, Paul, so, okay, there is no heaven. I'm going to die. I'm not going to live forever and get the mansion and have the family dog and do all that stuff. Does death scare you?
So, I mean, I'm in this weird case where I had my cancer diagnosis immediately after I deconverted. And at one point, they thought I might only have 4 weeks to live. So I had to face that much more directly than most. So now at this point, no, like death doesn't scare me. But I got to tell you, for a month of my life, for a month of my life, I was forced to stare at that very, very directly. Yeah, but now I don't. Now for me, death is it's the party's going to. I'm sorry that the party will go on, that I won't be part of it, but the actual non-existence doesn't bother me anymore. It's weird, but it really just it doesn't affect me. Does it affect you? Is that something that?
Well,
you fear still?
I'm so. One thing about you saying that for 4 weeks you thought you might be looking right at it.
Yep.
And you can then, as a human being, empathize and understand why someone who is thinking, "Oh shit, this is it," or I may have the rest of my life might involve a lot of suffering. We can understand why the idea of going to a perfect afterlife and living with joy and peace and seeing we understand why people might gravitate to that. And I think it's important that we approach those people with kindness. They're not stupid. They're not weak. They're not all these pejoratives that we throw. A lot of times, I mean, I get pissed off at my fellow atheists because they like to wax superior at religious people. Sometimes they are in devastation. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I think as human beings, as humanists, we have to solve human problems, because as long as we see lives full of suffering and all of these questions and concerns and chaos and all of this stuff, people are going to continue to look to the skies, right? It is just part of what people are going to do because they're afraid. And I think they deserve more than our condescension as we look down from the high mountain and fold our arms and say, "Oh shit, that guy with cancer thinks he's going to die and go to heaven. Well, isn't he in for a surprise?" Or actually, he won't even know it. Right. I think we can do better than that.
Agree.
To speak to your question, though, it's funny. I was more afraid of death when I was a Christian, and I'm not really sure why, because I really did believe in heaven, but I was scared of dying. Like, I don't want to die. Oh my God, I don't want to die. And then I became an atheist and realized, well, this is my one shot. And it did two things. The first thing it did is it really ramped up the urgency of living in the moment, right? If there is no tomorrow guaranteed, then this is it. Well, I better, let's say the shit that needs to be said. And let's, I don't tiptoe through your life trying to keep everybody else comfortable or happy. That's not what you need. Be true to your values, fight for which, love who you love, do what you do. And it just opened my world up. The second thing is it changed how I thought about death. It was Mark Twain, I think, who said something like, I had not existed for billions of years before now,
Right.
and I hadn't suffered the slightest inconvenience from it. And when I think about death as it's like before I was born, it doesn't bother me. Like, I won't know I'm not here. The only part of the equation that does give me pause is the process of dying. I think uselessness and suffering and burdening my family, those are the things that I think, I'm not sure I want any part. And it's one of the reasons, especially after the death of my father, and I saw him suffer quite a bit, that I became a huge proponent of medical aid in dying, death with dignity and right to die issues. People like to say, well, we're not, they're going to have euthanasia panels. And it's going to be Logan's Run. The second somebody becomes inconvenient, we're going to kill them. And I just think this is just more fear mongering. I want control as to how I leave. And I'd like to leave on my own terms while I'm still of sound body and mind and not be a burden to anybody else. And it's my life, damn it. And and that's something I would have considered almost blasphemous when I was a believer. Who are you to make those decisions about life and death? Did you feel that? Like, this is God's decision.
No, my constant line, and I'm totally on board. My line is, and it is still my real thing, I almost said, I do not fear death. My greatest fear is being kept alive against my will. Oof. That is I fear that more than anything.
Wow.
And so I'm with you. And unfortunately, Canada is in a better spot for some of that than
As
other
of
places.
just a few years ago, right? I mean, haven't you guys just passed some significant legislation?
We did.
Lines?
There's some significant. Yes. It's not perfect, but we are on our way. And of course, there's always the challenges and accusations that a doctor, conned my 90-year-old grandmother into accepting this when maybe she didn't want it. Like there's going to be some bumps to go through, right? Because it is a very final decision. But if I can't make it, that's what I fear.
I joke with Natalie that when I go, I don't want to. First, I know I don't want a casket. Don't put me in a freaking hole in the ground. I don't want to. Don't buy a casket. What the hell, right? But I know I'm going to be cremated or I'm going to donate my body to science or whatever. But I told her, what I really want is when my time comes, I want to be part of the bodies exhibit. So here's what I want you to do. But I'm not going commando. I want shorts on. I do not want my raw junk out in front of everybody. I'm a very shy, modest person. But if you can guarantee that I can have some tennis shorts on, I want you to pose me with a tennis racket. Okay. So there I am. You just put me in the bodies, put me in the truck and cart me from city to city so I can be useful and entertain people, ticket buyers. And then when I'm close to here, you can stop by and say hi and check on me and I'll be there already in a waving position. So for me, the bodies exhibit is kind of what I want.
That's your own immortality. Very good.
It's really my way of living on and giving something back. Is it Moises or Moses out of Oregon? 831.
It doesn't matter, but Moises is the more correct way. And Moy, like that.
Moises?
Yeah.
Okay, hit us. What's on your mind? You're on with Seth and Paul. We are a quiver. Oh, he's gone.
Uh-oh.
I feel somewhat cheated, Paul. Let's
I
try
do
John
too.
calling out of Pennsylvania. Welcome, John. I'm glad I'm not the only. Actually, you are now the third member of this show at this moment with a biblical name. So welcome.
Oh,
welcome.
no.
I was named after Pope John the 23rd. Today's my birthday, by the way. I just want to share. And
Happy
my
birthday.
father named me after the Pope. Thank you. My mom named me after a secret crush she had. My middle name, so it's really weird.
Wait, hang on. So I was going to say she had a crush on the Pope, but no, your middle name is your
my
mom's
middle
crush.
name is Michael. My middle name is Michael, and she had a secret crush on a guy that died in the Second World War. And
Right, well,
it was
that's better than what I heard. I
Yeah.
heard your dad had a crush on the Pope, but it was just the whole.
Oh no!
Anyway.
No! It wasn't that.
How does
It
your
wasn't that
father feel
salacious.
about you having the middle name of a man who was not him?
Well, here's the strange thing: is my mom just passed away a couple of days ago, so I've got two things going on: my birthday and my mother's passing. But she's a remarkable woman, and we're celebrating that. Which comes to my, I don't know, maybe my topic. It's changed since I heard Seth's wonderful talk about the potential slide into nihilism once things sort of fall away, the scales fall from the eyes. But I wanted to call because I was wondering, I just want to throw something by you guys. I was thinking about Durkheim. I mean, he's a sociologist, Durkheim, and he says something about religion being like an apotheosis, which is a big word. Apotheosis of society's morals. Like, it's not really so much about God as it is about the tribe's understanding of itself writ large and acquiescence to it. So it's almost like it's always been like political tribalistic kind of thing, which, and allowed in this country, we're allowed to have thousands of them. And it's very easy for them to be at odds with the government because they see themselves as having their own separate condition. But I think what I really wanted to mention and lend your opinion is, how many people do you think are really concerned so much with God? Or are they just simply, they cope with other mechanisms? Like the church gives them a footing, their community gives them an anchoring, their brains give them an isolating compartmentalization, and it gives them sort of just a coping mechanism, like Zancy's if you ever read The Last Messiah, the anti-natalist, he says some remarkable things about how human beings have coped with death and with meaninglessness. And
right, but John, can you acknowledge that those are not mutually exclusive? That the underlying sociology of why someone accepts these God notions, be they tribal or whatever, or utilitarian or any of these kind of things, that does not negate that individual is unaware of all that underlying stuff and is genuinely concerned with the idea of God. Like this is not a dichotomy per se.
Well, that's true. It would be ridiculous for me to think not, but I often see people, like, I remember, I'll stop with the anecdotes, but I'll be really quick about this. I remember being at a Jesuit university before I transferred out. At a Jesuit university, and I was actually thinking about becoming a Jesuit one time in my life. I was at a Jesuit university. I remember a Jesuit talking to another, talking about these parents who were really, really angry that their daughter had chose theology as her major. It wasn't because I got the feeling from the conversation that it wasn't so much about theology not bringing in the bucks as so much of, why would you waste your time with that? You're there to get a practical degree so you can make something of yourself. And there was kind of like the mask seemed to slip. I mean, I would see that where people were simply performing their religion, and they got a sense of belonging and community, like you often speak of. They also didn't want to think about the ultimate question. And when the ultimate questions, because they came knocking at their door with a family death or with their own mortality, they would find solace in the absolute irrationality of these theological propositions.
All right, John. Let me jump in.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So,
Okay.
Paul, do you think, I'm hearing a riff on, do people believe for reasons of theology, or do they believe for reasons of identity? That's kind of what I'm hearing. John, am I
That,
close?
yeah,
Yeah,
that sounds,
yeah,
sounds
that's
like
kind
me.
of where I'm
Okay.
thinking.
All right.
Like,
All right.
like if you're sorry. Okay.
Go ahead. You're a
So,
tad verbose, John, so I'm trying to dial you in just a little bit. Paul, take
so
over for me.
sorry.
What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I guess I'm not sure how this is a useful question, because let's say that we could get everyone to honestly self-report. Based on what I'm hearing, you would already undermine the people can't self-report.
That's
Which
exactly
what
it.
is the real reason why they believe? And I'm not
Yeah.
sure how this is. I'm not sure about the usefulness of the question. I can tell you that I was very, 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 very concerned about God. So I know that it is possible, right? Like I was far more religious than the people around me and my family, and sometimes they even look at me now and like, well, you were so into it. Like, so I guess I know from my experience, which is non-transferable to anyone else, that it is possible to come at this honestly. So,
Yeah.
given that it can't, given that it can't be 0%, I'm just not sure what is the use
Well,
of this question, and how would you even find out? Are you just asking for our vibes on this?
well, the thing is, I have. It may be there are two things I wanted to say. There was a time in my life when things fell apart, and I was thinking about going into the Trappists to become a monk. And I had taken my vacation time to go and visit. So I went very, very deep, and I was reading theology, from John of Clairvaux, John of the Cross, all of that stuff, seriously crying, and all that stuff. So I understand what it is like to really dive deep. But I'm wondering, maybe it's an untestable sociological thing to be able to have people self-report faithfully that they're just looking for a compartment in order to put their lives, and they really don't think about God very much. But I'm an atheist now, and it might beg the question of maybe the truer believers, or the truer people that took the truer dives, were the ones ending up. What is the percentage of us ending up rejecting it? But I was thinking maybe the people that do call in that are still true believers, a good percentage of them may be just like what we were, but there's a whole sea of people that will never call in that don't want to even think about these things.
Yeah,
And
if the question,
I don't know.
The question, John, is, do more people deeply think about this than not? No, I think it's the minority of people who deeply think about it, and the majority are very happy with the benefits they get. But that doesn't mean that they're insincere.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah,
but if someone's giving you a free meal every day, how much time do you spend? How much would you spend thinking about where that's coming from? So it's just one of those things. I'm not sure is a useful question. But Seth, you probably have thoughts.
I actually released a presentation last fall. It's on YouTube. It's called "The Brick Wall Brain: Why Facts Usually Don't Change Minds." And there's a section in there that talks about identity. I said earlier in this show, I really don't think most people identify with the religion for reasons of theology. I don't think the people who go to Sunday go to meet in church and have cross necklaces and Jesus fishes on their car and all that stuff. There's a reason that atheists statistically know more about the Bible than people who say it's true, right? Because they're not as interested in the Bible beyond the cherry pick stuff that makes them feel good and that looks good on a placard somewhere or over the mantle of the kitchen. They are more interested in the culture, the belonging, the tribe, the sort of the balm that religion provides. It pats them on the head. It says you're very special, you're chosen, you're going to live forever. And there's a lot of other baggage that comes along with that that's much more negative. But I really do think that most people believe for reasons of where were you born? What was the religion of your parents, right? The two main determiners of what your specific religion might be. I think we are tribal primates. There are evolutionary reasons that we band together and create in-groups and out-groups. I think there were cultural reinforcers. I think there were consequential reinforcers. I think there was pressure from our peer groups. I think there were so many there are thousands of gears in the machine, in the belief machine. I think some people are more sincere than others. Some people are more educated than others. Jesus, there's 8 billion people on the planet. Everybody's taking their own journey at their own pace for their own reason. So I can't put them in a category. But I
The
do
8
think
billion
that most
churches.
believers believe for reasons of identity and community and not the theology of their faith. I don't think they give all that much of
Yeah.
a shit about what the
Yeah.
Bible says. I
Yeah.
think they like having it as a kind of a
Yeah.
totem.
I agree. I agree.
Okay.
There's that. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's you know. And there are those moments, and I'll just say this, and I'll won't belabor the point. There are those moments that some people reach in their life where their own resources, even their social resources, sort of fall away, and they're left, can't solve the problem rationally, so they jump to whatever might work. And my brother virtually went to like a witch doctor in a sense to cure him of his smoking. And he did something that I thought my brother would never do something like this. He seemed like an extremely rational person, but he never smoked again. But it was all the placebo effect, and he was dead certain that this some magic had occurred. I think the guy just basically sprayed him with what was holy water to him or something, and said some incantation, some strange thing like that. But anyway, I mean, people are susceptible when the chips are down. Even so, when the chips are down, and aside from just not having any crises, a place to belong. Anyway, I just wanted to pass that by you. I thank you for your thoughts, and I guess we just are all in agreement, more or less.
Thanks so much, John. Appreciate you calling.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
All
thank
right.
you.
John and Paul representing the New Testament on the show tonight. Were you named after Paul? I mean, was it a biblical
course.
thing when you got your name?
Yes, the apostle was absolutely was my namesake. Not the Beatle.
I was a lot of people don't know who Seth is in the Bible. He was the third. He was the one son of Adam and Eve that was not involved in a homicide. That's the way I like to phrase it, right? Because the shit goes down with Cain and Abel, and I'm like, fuck. All right, well, there's Seth. Now, Seth is the anointed one, and that's how I'm supposed to be known, as the anointed son, the one who wasn't a total screw up. And apparently, I was part of the genesis of the species in the Bible, so it was kind of a big deal. And what's funny is when I go to conventions, every once in a while, somebody will bring a Bible to the event, and they'll say, "Hey, would you sign this?" They'll have the atheist speakers sign their Bible, and it's awesome. So
That's
I always
hilarious.
open it up because it's a different page in every Bible that they give me, and I always find my name in early Genesis, and I'll find out what page it's on in the story right after Cain and Abel fuck each other up, and then there, and then I'll just sign it. I'm on page 8, and then I sign my name underneath it. It is absolutely
love it.
Awesome. It is absolutely
Amazing.
awesome. Any final thoughts on the day, Paul, before we pull the plug and let everybody get on with the rest of their evening? Anything that just comes to mind? Anything you want to leave anybody
Well, the
with
last thought
today?
I had was that I am regularly in a position where I do a phrase that I often say to myself is, "Boy, I sure wish I could pray about this." I'm almost a decade out of religion now, and it still comes up that this would have been the exact time where I would have, elicited some help. So the psychology of it is all very real. I get that because it's still something that would comfort me. So I don't look down upon anyone for whom that is a comfort, but it is better to know that the person whom you're calling for help is not there to answer than not to. So I don't despair. Yeah. Anyway, that's my final thought. It still happens to me, lest that encourages any of you.
I think when it's a distraction from flesh and blood, real world problems and solutions, I think that's when I really start. I mean, the people who are, it's like after the horrible flooding in Texas, and Ted Cruz and Greg Abbott are calling for prayers, and we're like, fuck off, send us the money and the rescue teams and and the actual tangible flesh and blood human support that we need in this horrible, horrible time. And then the rains stop, and Abbott says, I think God called the rains to stop. And now there are organizations that are shipping Bibles down there to the rescue victims and survivors. And I think, what message does that send? God says, sorry about all the dead people. Here are a few nice pieces of paper, right? Here's some paper
Yep.
for you. And I find so often they are a distraction and often a cheat. The more, Ingersoll famously said, the more false we destroy, the more room there will be for the true. And I think let's destroy the false, even the stuff that made us feel good. Because if it's not true,
Yep.
was it Bertrand Russell? He said, if it's true, we should believe it. If it's not true, we should not. And if we don't know, we should withhold judgment. I think that's a fair way to approach life. And Paul, it's always an honor to be able to spend some time co-hosting with you and sort of shooting the shit and catching up and all
Absolutely.
that good stuff. Thanks to
You've
Arden,
highlighted my schedule.
the glue that holds the entire enterprise together. Thanks to you for watching and listening. Be safe. Hang in there. We'll see you next time on The Line. Good night.